The NFL offseason is in full swing, and the rumor mill is churning at full speed as teams position themselves for potential trades, draft strategies, and roster reshuffling. The Dallas Cowboys, as always, find themselves right in the middle of the conversation. Will they make another big move before the draft wraps up? That's the million-dollar question on everyone's mind right now. So far, the Cowboys have already pulled off 2 trades, one involving a key player and another that brought in a different athlete to bolster the squad. But the big question lingering over Dallas is whether they'll swing another deal before the draft concludes. The front office has been open about exploring options, and there have been strong signals that they're not done wheeling and dealing just yet. Let's rewind a bit. During free agency, there were clear indications that Dallas was actively working the phones, trying to finalize some moves. And sure enough, they got 2 trades over the line. But now, as we head into the 3rd day of the NFL draft, often seen as prime time for late-round steals and savvy veteran acquisitions, the Cowboys still have opportunities to make something happen. History shows that mid to late-round picks, think 5th, 6th, or 7th rounders, can sometimes be flipped for proven players who can contribute right away. One of their recent trades worked out nicely, while another was a bit more of a mixed bag. But hey, that's the nature of the game. Overall, the front office has to feel good about how things have played out so far. But with 3 picks in the top 145 selections, the challenge now is figuring out how to address all the remaining needs on this roster. And let's be real, the list of needs isn't short. Running back, wide receiver, cornerback, defensive tackle, defensive end, and even backup quarterback are all positions that could use reinforcements. Oh, and let's not forget about linebacker. Adding some depth there wouldn't hurt either. The offensive line could always use some attention, and safety is another spot where the Cowboys might get creative. Now, here's the thing. Expecting a rookie picked at, say, number 211 to come in and be an immediate difference maker is a stretch. But if Dallas can package that pick to land a seasoned veteran, that's where things get interesting. Swapping a late rounder for a proven contributor could be a sneaky good move, especially if it fills a hole without breaking the bank. But enough about the draft for a second. Let's talk about the trade buzz that just won't quit. One name keeps popping up in rumors, and it all started with the player himself stirring the pot on social media. Late on a Sunday night, he responded to a team analyst's post about a potential trade with nothing but a laughing emoji. Then, just to keep everyone guessing, he dropped a peace sign in a follow-up tweet. Cue the chaos. If you're a fan of this team, you've probably been on an emotional roller coaster with this whole saga. On one hand, the player made it clear earlier this year, after last season ended, that he wasn't happy with how things were going and wanted change. But then, after some internal discussions, he backed off and said he'd stay through 2025. Now, the drama is flaring up again, and nobody's quite sure where this is headed. Team officials have downplayed the idea of a trade, pointing out that the player is still showing up to workouts and remains engaged. But let's be honest, when a guy starts tweeting cryptic messages, it's hard not to read into it. And from a financial standpoint, moving him would be complicated. The Cowboys would take a massive salary cap hit. We're talking $27.7 million, and any team acquiring him would have to absorb a hefty contract. That's a lot to swallow for what might end up being a 1-year rental. So is a trade realistic? Maybe, but it's far from simple. And given how the Cowboys usually operate, I wouldn't hold my breath. They're not known for making splashy moves just for the sake of headlines. If they do pull the trigger, it'll be because the numbers make sense, not because of social media hype. Now, shifting gears to another hot topic, quarterbacks. The Cowboys have made it no secret that they're in the market for a backup QB. Stephen Jones even mentioned it publicly, sparking a wave of speculation about who might be on their radar. One name floating around is Joe Milton III, the former Tennessee and Michigan quarterback now with the Patriots. Word is Dallas liked him coming out of college, but if they wanted him that badly, they probably would have drafted him. Still, he's an intriguing option. On one hand, Milton has all the physical tools, big arm, great athleticism, and the kind of size that scouts drool over. But on the other hand, his consistency has always been a question mark. If you only watched his highlights, you'd think he's a future Pro Bowler. But if you saw his preseason struggles, you'd wonder if he's even roster-worthy. That's the gamble with Milton. He's the definition of a high-ceiling, low-floor prospect. Would the Cowboys really trade a day 3 pick for him? Maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it. Then there's Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener, both backup QBs with the Saints. Rattler had his chance to shine last season and didn't exactly light the world on fire, while Haener has been buried on the depth chart. Neither seems like a surefire upgrade, but if Dallas is just looking for a cheap, developmental arm, they could be options. The reality is, finding a reliable backup QB via trade is tough. Most teams don't want to give theirs up, which is why the free agent market and the draft might be better avenues. And speaking of the draft, the Cowboys' new merch is already out. Hats and jerseys for the 2025 season are up for grabs. Gotta say, the designs are pretty clean this year. But back to the real talk. What's the most realistic trade scenario for Dallas? If I had to guess, it's probably adding a veteran backup QB or maybe a depth piece on defense. Anything bigger than that would be a surprise. And let's address one last rumor that's been making the rounds. A proposed trade sending a certain player to Dallas in exchange for 2 third-round picks. On paper, the value isn't terrible, but the financial implications? Brutal. The Cowboys would lose a ton of cap space, and the other team would have to eat a big option bonus. A 1-year rental might be doable, but a long-term commitment at that price? Hard to see it happening. At the end of the day, the Cowboys front office plays it cool. They don't typically make panic moves, and they're not about to start now. So while the rumors are fun to dissect, don't expect anything too wild. Unless, of course, Jerry Jones decides to shake things up. And hey, in the NFL, you never say never. As the NFL draft continues to unfold, the Dallas Cowboys remain one of the most fascinating teams to watch, not just for their picks, but for the potential moves they could still make. The front office has been playing this offseason like a calculated chess match, weighing every decision carefully. And while they've already made a couple of trades, the feeling around the league is that they might not be done just yet. One of the biggest storylines hanging over this team is the uncertainty at wide receiver. We've talked about the social media drama, the cryptic tweets, and the financial complications of a potential trade. But here's the thing. If the Cowboys do decide to move on from their star pass catcher, they'd better have a solid plan B in place. Because right now, the free agent market isn't exactly overflowing with game-changing talent. That means if they want an immediate impact player, they might have to get creative via trade. And that's where things get tricky. The Cowboys aren't known for reckless spending or blockbuster deals. They prefer calculated, value-driven moves. So if they do pull off another trade before the draft wraps up, it'll likely be for someone who fits their system without breaking the bank. Maybe a mid-tier veteran who can step in right away, or a young player with untapped potential. But one thing's for sure, they won't overpay just to make a splash. Speaking of value, let's talk about those draft picks. With 3 selections in the top 145, Dallas has some flexibility. They could package a couple of mid-rounders to move up if a player they love starts slipping. Or they could stand pat and trust their board. The beauty of this draft is that there's depth at several positions of need: cornerback, defensive line, and even running back. So even if they don't make another trade, they should still come away with some solid contributors. But here's the wild card, the backup quarterback situation. We've already mentioned a few names: Joe Milton, Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, but there's another layer to this. The Cowboys aren't just looking for a clipboard holder. They want someone who can step in and keep the offense afloat if disaster strikes. And that's why the trade market is so intriguing. Take Milton, for example. The physical tools are undeniable. 6 feet 5 inches cannon arm, athletic enough to extend plays. But the consistency issues are real. If the Cowboys believe their coaching staff can unlock his potential, maybe he's worth a late-round flyer. But if they're looking for a safer option, they might pivot to a more experienced backup. The problem? Those guys don't come cheap. Then there's the defensive side of the ball. The Cowboys have needs at every level: defensive tackle, edge rusher, linebacker, and cornerback. And while the draft will address some of those holes, a well-timed trade could accelerate the process. Imagine if Dallas swings a deal for a proven run stopper in the middle of their defensive line, or a physical corner who can match up with the league's elite receivers. Those are the kinds of moves that could shift the balance in the NFC East. But here's the reality. Trades are never as easy as they seem. Salary cap constraints, contract demands, and competing offers all play a role. And for a team like the Cowboys, who are always under a microscope, every move is scrutinized twice as hard. That's why they've been so methodical this offseason. They're not going to force a trade just for the sake of headlines. Now, let's circle back to the draft itself. Day 3 is where champions are built. It's where savvy teams find hidden gems who outplay their draft position. And for the Cowboys, this is an opportunity to add depth at positions that might not be flashy, but are absolutely critical. Think offensive line depth, a developmental tight end, a speedy return specialist. These are the kinds of picks that pay dividends down the road. And let's not forget about the undrafted free agent market. Last year, the Cowboys found a couple of contributors who didn't hear their names called on draft weekend. History says they'll do the same this year. So even if they don't make another trade, they'll have plenty of avenues to improve this roster. At the end of the day, the Cowboys' offseason strategy boils down to one word: patience. They're not going to rush into a bad deal. They're not going to overreact to fan pressure or media speculation. They're going to stick to their board, trust their evaluations, and make moves that make sense for both the short-term and long-term future of this franchise. So what's next? Could another trade materialize before the draft concludes? Absolutely. Will it be the blockbuster move some fans are hoping for? Probably not. But that's okay, because the Cowboys are building something here, piece by piece, move by move. And if history tells us anything, it's that this front office knows how to find value when it matters most. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The Dallas Cowboys have never been shy about making bold moves, but their latest pursuit could send shockwaves through the NFL. Reports indicate that the Cowboys are aggressively targeting Baltimore Ravens superstar quarterback Lamar Jackson, a two-time MVP and one of the most electrifying players in the league. With Dak Prescott's long-term future in Dallas uncertain, Jerry Jones appears ready to roll the dice on a franchise-altering acquisition. Could this be the move that finally brings another Super Bowl to Dallas? Jackson's credentials speak for themselves. Since taking over as the Ravens starter, he has rewritten record books, redefining what it means to be a dual-threat quarterback. His ability to dominate both through the air and on the ground has made him a nightmare for defenses. However, despite his personal success, the Ravens have struggled to turn his brilliance into a championship. Frustrations over contract negotiations and roster-building decisions have led to murmurs that Jackson could be open to a change of scenery. The Cowboys, perpetually seeking to recapture their 1990s glory, see an opportunity to land one of the league's most dynamic playmakers. Jerry Jones is known for making splashy moves, and acquiring Jackson would be a headline-stealing masterstroke. While Dak Prescott has been a solid leader in Dallas, his playoff shortcomings have raised doubts about his ability to take the team to the promised land. Swapping Prescott for Jackson would be a seismic shift, one that would immediately change the NFC landscape. Of course, making this deal happen would be far from simple. Jackson's contract is one of the richest in league history, and any trade would require the Cowboys to navigate a complex financial landscape. Additionally, the Ravens would likely demand a king's ransom in return. Dallas would need to part with multiple high draft picks and possibly key players to make this blockbuster move a reality. But with Jones running out of patience and the Cowboys' championship window potentially closing, the risk might be worth the reward. If the Cowboys do manage to land Jackson, the implications would be massive. The NFC East would instantly become a battleground, with Dallas boasting a quarterback capable of outdueling the league's best. A Jackson-led Cowboys offense, paired with their elite defense, could position them as legitimate Super Bowl contenders. The next few weeks could determine whether this is merely speculation or the beginning of a new era in Dallas. One thing is certain, the NFL world will be watching closely. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.